Hey, well, let's get right into it. How about it? I'm Dan Haggerty. Welcome to The Story. So this is a show about having a conversation. We want you to email us. You see all the stuff at the bottom of your screen. Send it to thestory@kgw.com. You can send me a tweet using the hashtag HeyDan. Find me on Facebook or Instagram. You know, however you want to get a hold of me, you can probably do it that way because we had a lot to talk about tonight. Thanksgiving, COVID, we're going to get into it all. But I want to start with something else. And it's our big story. And it's about one piece of video. Now, normally when I say something like that, we get right into the video and we roll it. But we're not going to do that. Not tonight, at least not with this story, because we want to give you time to change the channel if you want. It might be too tough for some people to watch. It's video that shows the moments leading up to and the moment that deputies shot and killed a young black man in Clark County. Now, let's be clear. No matter what you think about this video, the story itself is all around tragic. Someone is dead. His name was Kevin Peterson Jr. He had people who loved him, and those people, his family, are sticking by him, as family often does in these situations. And they say that the video shows him being hunted, trapped, and killed, while investigators say it shows exactly why he did die, pulling a gun on deputies. Here's Maggie Vespa.
Shots fired, shots fired.
Dispatch audio, drone video, and surveillance footage from multiple cameras. All of it compiled and released Wednesday by a team of independent investigators to show, they say, the moments before Kevin Peterson Jr. was killed.
Could have been any of us, and it's just sad that it happens.
The 21-year-old from Camas died on October 29th in the parking lot of a U.S. bank in Hazel Dell. Investigators said he was there to sell Xanax, unaware the buyer had tipped off law enforcement. They say Peterson arrived around 5:50. By 6, deputies with the Clark County Sheriff's Office would shoot and kill him. The next day, the sheriff said this about why.
The information I have is that upon entering the parking lot of the bank, the man reportedly fired his weapon at the deputies.
A team of investigators from other agencies across the state later walked that back, saying there was no evidence Peterson had fired at law enforcement. Clark County deputies do not wear body cameras. Wednesday's video offers new clarity.
He's running.
The 11-minute clip starts with a photo of Peterson obtained, investigators say, by law enforcement before the shooting. In the text over it, Peterson says he will feed the law if caught, with emojis of a cop and a gun. Investigators say deputies saw this as a general threat. Minutes later, deputies in unmarked vehicles block in Peterson's car. He gets out and runs, putting his hand in his pocket. He runs off camera, and that's when, according to graphics in the video, deputies see Peterson drop a gun and pick it back up.
Hey, Stubbs, do not chase him around the corner.
According to the video, Peterson gets away for a couple minutes, walking here around the east side of the bank before encountering law enforcement again. While running, again off camera, they say Peterson pointed his gun at deputies. One deputy fired. Here, Peterson runs back on camera again and falls. We'll pause here for a couple seconds because it's important to note the video does not say whether Peterson fell because he was shot or if he tripped. He then appears to sit up and point something at deputies. Investigators say that is his gun, and they highlight that in the video, which we're freezing here. Moments later, you see Peterson slump to the ground. In total, deputies fired 34 rounds, 4 of which hit Peterson. A drone from law enforcement shows deputies rendering aid. Peterson died at the scene. The family of Kevin Peterson Jr. is being represented by civil rights attorney Ben Crump. Crump also represents the family of George Floyd. Wednesday, via Crump's office, the family released a statement. Peterson's father, Kevin Peterson Sr., zeroing in on the moment his son fell, believes he was shot as he ran away. He wrote, "The sheriff and others lied when they said Kevin shot at officers. Now we see the video, and Kevin's back was toward the officers, but they shot him anyway. They chased him down, trapped him, and killed him." Again, the video does not say why Peterson fell. We've reached out to investigators for clarification. The case is now headed to prosecutors for review. Maggie Vespa, KGW News.
Now, our regular viewers on the story, you know that we're all about transparency on this show. That video is embedded in that story at kgw.com. You can head there yourself right now and check it out if you'd like to watch again and make your own assumptions on what you're seeing there. All right, let's talk about our other huge story, the pandemic and the surge in cases right before Thanksgiving. Now, a lot of you have questions that I want to try and answer tonight. Keep sending them using on Twitter using the hashtag HeyDan. Here's one from Brad about vaccines. Where does the Operation Warp Speed program come into play with vaccine distribution? The director of Oregon Health Authority and Governor Kate Brown got asked about that at a press conference today.
What I do know is the amount of vaccine that will come out initially will not be as much as we'd like it to be, but that it appears that things are poised for that number to ramp up fairly rapidly, particularly if there are multiple vaccines available to distribute.
And Alex, just to give you a perspective, Pat mentioned roughly 30,000 vaccines for December. Our top priority will be will ensure that the vaccines go to our healthcare workforce, particularly those caring for COVID patients. But our healthcare workforce is roughly 300,000 folks. So you can see that we're a long ways off from getting the number of vaccines that we need to vaccinate our entire population. And then secondly, both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are 2 doses. So we would get a first batch in December and then a rolling batch hopefully in January. All of those folks that got the initial vaccine in December would then need to be vaccinated again. So it will take some time. The good news is there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
And any light right now at the end of any tunnel is good news for a lot of us to hear. But for now, of course, the best way to fight this thing is to stay apart from each other. And since tomorrow is Thanksgiving, we're still getting a lot of questions about whether you're supposed to report people who are having large gatherings, like this email from Larry. Hey, Dan, I have been told that Governor Brown actually said people should report their neighbors if they think there are too many people in their home, say on Thanksgiving, which would be breaking her orders. Is there any truth to that? So last week, Maggie Vespa asked Governor Brown exactly that question. Here's what she had to say.
Do you want people calling the police on their neighbors, not emergency lines or 911?
Look, this is no different than what happens if there's a party down the street and it's keeping everyone awake. What do neighbors do? They call law enforcement because it's too noisy.
That could be a yes.
Yes.
But I do want to clear something up. The police, they don't want you to be calling 911 because of large gatherings in your neighborhood. They say that is not what they classify as an emergency. If you want to report something like that, call your police department's non-emergency line instead. Now, again, that doesn't mean the police are going to be showing up and arresting people and pulling them out of their house with a turkey leg hanging out of their mouth. Portland police say that they instead will take an educational first approach and try to get people to maybe break up any large gatherings voluntarily. They're also going to issue citations and make arrests as a very last resort. We've heard from so many of you this week about our story on the county officials traveling to Hawaii, even though there was a freeze here in Oregon and the CDC has said not to travel. Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon Myron, for instance, was calling for a statewide stay-at-home order while on vacation in Hawaii. Paul wrote us saying, in part, I am a frontline physician and an essential worker that travels to Hawaii regularly. I find it strange that Sharon Myron is not only traveling there for leisure, but was able to secure a precious pre-travel test for her and her family as required by the state to bypass quarantine when I'm having trouble securing my own test. So it turns out that Sharon is lucky that she made it onto the island. Our Kristen Severance heard from passengers who made it all the way to Hawaii with a negative COVID test in hand and were still turned away.
Amanda Thornton and her daughter were all smiles as they headed to Hawaii in early November, taking selfies at the airport and on the plane.
She lost so much this year with graduation, prom and actually graduating, senior trip. So I wanted to make it extra special for her.
Hawaii has strict rules about flying into the state. Starting this week, in order to bypass the state's mandatory 14-day quarantine, you must take a COVID test 72 hours before your flight departs. You must test negative, and you must get tested from a, quote, trusted partner, basically an approved vendor on the state's website. Then you have to upload all of your documents online and get a QR code before you fly there. But when Amanda and her daughter traveled to Hawaii a few weeks ago, you didn't have to show your negative results until you arrived in Hawaii. Amanda showed her negative test from Rite Aid. The only problem, Rite Aid is not considered a trusted source by the state of Hawaii.
And so I asked my doctor places to go, and she said, well, Rite Aid will do your test. I didn't think that it wouldn't be a trusted source because, they're a big pharmacy.
In order to stay, they would have to quarantine in their hotel for 14 days. But the airport employees could not connect with Amanda's Airbnb.
And they said, well, we can't get a hold of the hotel. And so you guys have to go home tonight. My daughter was crying. We planned this trip because it was for her 18th birthday and it was for her graduation.
Mom and daughter flew back to Portland an hour after they arrived. We found dozens of comments on Facebook from other families turned away. And we heard from other passengers confused about the policy. Brian Dorn flew to Hawaii in mid-October to stay with a friend. He also had a negative test, but it was not from a trusted partner. They let him through with a warning.
They said that it was good for now, but in the future that it wouldn't be. And I think that's because I had arrived, literally 48 hours after they had made those announcements and those rules. The overall message that I had was they still have some kinks to work out.
Amanda is glad the rules changed so you don't get all the way to Hawaii and get turned away. She just hopes they stay that way when she and her daughter return in 2021.
They don't even have a backup. They should have at least a backup for people in that situation so they're not sending tourists home.
I did reach out to officials with the state of Hawaii, and a spokesperson told me they have to be strict about these rules. Hawaii is an island, and they have limited medical services there. They also told me the trusted partners are listed right there on the state's website. We have heard from several sources right now that it's very difficult to get the test you need in order to fly to Hawaii. And maybe that's a good thing because as we've been saying, the CDC says you should not be flying right now.
When the story continues, we're going to take a look back at the history of Thanksgiving, including when Oregon celebrated the holiday twice in the same year, all because of some petty politics. And remember when we were all binging Tiger King? Well, it turns out one of Joe Exotic's lions now lives in the Beaver State. Less housework, less dishes. That's a good point. I haven't thought about that. Welcome back. I asked people, we've been playing those, or at least showing those comments there as we come in and out of commercials. But on Facebook, I asked how your Thanksgiving plans were changing. So if you'd like to weigh in, let us know or read some other people's comments. They're kind of fun. But on that note, KGW asked some of the people who work here to do some videos to talk about what we were thankful for. So my family and I, we tried, okay? We really tried.
All right, guys, Daddy's gonna say his name, and then you guys say your names, okay?
Hey, I'm Dan Haggerty. Happy Thanksgiving. Will, just let me do this one.
And this is Will, and this is Miles.
And I hope you have good turkeys. And we're very sad because town has germs.
We are thankful for so much, including working for this great station.
Have a happy and
No, that was so good.
Thanksgiving.
Well, I'll splice that together and send it.
But you need to send it like now. That's what I'm trying to do, like a 15-second one.
A 15
Guys, one more.
One more.
And then it's done.
Okay.
And then it's done. We gotta nail it though, okay? You guys ready?
We're the Haggertys, and we're thankful for all of the things we love. Now can we get a treat?
The little one, Miles, would literally do anything for a treat. Like my one said, Will said, we're sad because the town has germs, which, yeah, I guess it does. If you have kids, you know, could you imagine trying to do something like that? And while we were thinking of ideas, though, for today's show, we want to do a little something on the history of Thanksgiving in Oregon. So we did some research, and it turns out that for 2 years, Oregon actually celebrated 2 Thanksgivings, all because our governor was fighting with the president. So why don't we dive into the KGW vault, shall we? Way back to the 1890s, before TV even existed, this guy, Sylvester Pennoyer, was the governor of Oregon at the time, and he was already kind of a contentious governor there. He refused to meet with President Benjamin Harrison when he visited Oregon. Then, when President Grover Cleveland was sworn in, things got really heated. In 1893, Cleveland was worried about violence under the Chinese Exclusion Act, so he told governors to protect Chinese Americans. But Pennoyer didn't want to, so he sent a telegram to Cleveland reading, I will attend to my business. Let the president attend to his. Shots fired big time. Then, to really spite him, Pennoyer decided to proclaim Thanksgiving in Oregon on the 4th Thursday of November. Problem was, Cleveland had already proclaimed the national holiday for the 5th Thursday. This happened in both 1893 and 1894. Pennoyer got some national attention for this. An editorial published in Chicago said, Pennoyer is a gubernatorial freak with execrable taste and bad manners, and his proclamation is an outrage. Illinois extends her most profound sympathy to Oregon. Pennoyer's term ended in 1895, so we went back to having just one Thanksgiving after that. For centuries, Americans have gathered to eat a bunch of food and give thanks. Except hopefully not this year, considering COVID and all. But how did we get here? I think we're all familiar with the story of the Pilgrims' first Thanksgiving in 1621. They arrived in Plymouth in modern-day Massachusetts on the Mayflower. Native Americans formed an alliance with them and taught them how to grow corn. After the successful fall harvest, the Pilgrims and Native Americans gathered for a celebratory feast. Now, unfortunately, this story glosses over the atrocities Native Americans faced at the hands of colonists both before and after the Mayflower's arrival. In fact, historians actually say it's one of the only historical examples of harmony between the two groups. Still, the Thanksgiving tradition continued for colonists. After the U.S. declared its independence, most presidents issued proclamations for Thanksgiving each year. During the Civil War, Lincoln set the date as the final Thursday in November. Then, in 1942, Congress decided to make Thanksgiving the 4th Thursday in November, and it became a federal holiday. However, since 1970, some Native Americans have marked Thanksgiving as a national day of mourning instead, as a reminder of the massacres and forced relocations of Native Americans throughout history. Since 2008, the day after Thanksgiving has also been celebrated as Native American Heritage Day. And that's how we got here. We've got a little update for you on something that happened during a protest last month that caused a lot of outrage. You remember when the Oregon Historical Society was vandalized? I'm sure you do. This quilt, there you see it, was also stolen and later found outside on the ground. It's called the Afro-American Heritage Bicentennial Commemorative Quilt, and it was created in 1974 by a group of 15 black women to honor the heritage and contributions of black Americans through the country's history. Now, the good news is it wasn't ripped or torn in any way like that, and the Historical Society was able to dry it out, but it did have some kind of red stain all over it. So last week, they sent it to New York to a nonprofit that specializes in preserving textiles. They decided to try and restore the front of the quilt, but they'll have to remove and replace, they say, the backing because of the stain. Now, we've talked a lot about how this second lockdown feels a whole lot like the first one back in March. This brought back memories of a certain show that I think really just united the nation as we hunkered down indoors and binge-watched Netflix back in the spring. That's right, I'm talking about the Tiger King. One of the show's stars is right here in Oregon, and sorry to disappoint, it's not Joe Exotic. Spoiler alert, he is in jail. I'm talking about Chobe, a 300-pound lioness was rescued from Joe Exotic's Big Cat theme park in Oklahoma back in 2018 and sent to a sanctuary in Scouts Mill. She's at Oregon State University right now, recovering from a life-saving uterus surgery. We talked to some of her caretakers today.
She's recuperating, she's eating, she's irritated that she can't get out of her crate yet.
My hope for her is she just lives a wonderful, happy little chirping life, out there with her sister.
All right, as for Joe Exotic, the man you see there, he's asking President Trump for a pardon to get out of jail. Yeah, the way 2020's been going, it might happen. Who knows? We're going to stay on that. We'll bring you that breaking news if it happens. But he's been there for 2 years, and he's ready to get out, back into the Tiger biz. For now, I'm sticking in the news biz. We're going to read some comments, maybe answer some questions, and see you after the break. I'll see you then. We've been running gotten those comments this week, people telling us how they're changing their Thanksgiving plans. If you feel like it, let us know what you're doing tomorrow and how you're changing things up. Use the hashtag #HeyDan. You know, even if you're not gathering with your family, and I know there are a lot of things we can be kind of bitter about right now, but let's not forget what we should also be thankful for. There's a teenager in Canby doing that sort of thing. She beat cancer as a toddler, and now she wants to help other kids facing that same scary diagnosis. Here's John Goodwin.
Everything is worth fighting for, and you can reach any goal that you want to, even if it seems really far away and hard.
Like many college freshmen, Caitlin Gartrell is tiptoeing through a unique beginning to her college experience.
Well, considering that I'm taking class from my childhood bedroom, it's pretty good for online.
The 19-year-old graduated from Canby High School last year, is now virtually attending class at Pepperdine University and focused on her career goals.
From a very young age, I was like, I want to be a doctor or like something of that kind. It was kind of always something that I dreamed of doing.
Her passion has become pediatric oncology because she's already walked in those shoes.
So when I was 3 years old, I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I'd been sick for a couple months, and then my parents got the news, and my journey started with a 2-week stay in the hospital at Legacy Emmanuel in Portland.
As Caitlin went through treatment, her mom stopped working to stay home with her full-time. The journey made her whole family closer, but at a financial cost.
Since my family spent a lot of our money on cancer, like treatment and stuff when I was younger, I have to put myself through college myself, and so I'll be paying for everything on my own.
Thanks to a $10,000 scholarship from Northwestern Mutual, the burden is a little lighter. It's part of a company program created to ease financial stress for cancer survivors pursuing college education. Caitlin is one of 43 recipients nationwide.
Overcoming cancer was such a huge feat when I was younger that I've always wanted to just keep reaching goals and things, because I think from that age it made me very goal-oriented and just a fighter.
She says leaning on her family and support system was the greatest weapon in her cancer fight. Today, she's looking forward to walking alongside others faced with a tough diagnosis.
Because it's something that I've experienced, and it's something that I'm really passionate about, and it affected my life so much that how could I not want to give back to other kids that have to go through that?
John Goodwin, KGW News.
All right, thanks so much for being with us tonight. So just so you know, we do not have any, the story will not be airing tomorrow for Thanksgiving or Friday, but we'll be back on Monday. Stay with me on social media, primarily my Facebook page. We'll be posting a lot of stuff on there. You can just find me at Dan Haggerty, KGW. In the meantime, I hope everybody out there has a fantastic Thanksgiving. Again, I know it's a weird one. It's been a really strange year, and I don't think I've ever realized how important the holiday season is until now. I know that sounds strange to say, but when you can't have it the way you're used to and catch up with family that maybe you only see once or twice a year, which often, you know, the holidays become that time of the year, man, it really makes it tough. So I'm feeling the pain along with you. And if you want to hang out and talk about it, let's do that on social media. Until Monday, have a good holiday weekend. I'll see you.